Stick to.
No, someone's not respected the rule last time.
Martin, yes, not go there just right now.
Let's not throw anyone under the bus, but who was it?
He's not here today, but it's
Yeah. I'm sure I heard you speak about it with crabbers like this. We'll do it anyway.
Yeah. Let's see how it goes. Vinny, you touched on it briefly. Can I just take you back to your final league game for City at Brighton? It must have a sort of special place in your heart, lifting your last Premier League trophy and everything.
It feels like a lifetime ago, honestly. The job I'm in now consumes you that much that I think I heard Krabbe say it was 4 years ago. It feels like it was 20 years ago. And in a profession, and the funny thing is, it's a profession that if I was doing the same profession right now, I'd be absolutely rubbish at it. So it feels like something I'm not even able to do anymore now, which is, be on that pitch and perform. And but they're all good memories, and I'm sure at Christmas time those moments will be rediscovered with the kids as well.
Did you know it was going to be your last league game at that time? I think there was a bit
in
of
the Premier League.
Yeah.
Yes, I knew. I was the only one to know.
Yeah. And there might be a familiar face there this Saturday, James Milner, old teammate of yours.
Yeah.
Are you surprised to see him still playing? I don't suppose you are, really.
Yeah, he's older than me. But I'm not surprised. No, if there's one guy that was going to do that, it was going to be Millie. The longevity. I mean, he's probably the hardest working player I've ever played with. And it's so funny because I've seen his journey from being this winger, attacking midfielder, central midfielder, fullback, and every single time I think that people would have not necessarily, some people would have bet against him, but if you know him and his personality, you'd never bet a penny against him, because this guy is just constantly relentless, and I'm sure he's a great leader for the dressing room there as well. So and I think as well the good thing for him is he's in a place where with the manager he's working now at his age. I know it's not just about getting minutes on the pitch, but also learning for what you could do next in football. So he's in a great environment to learn his trade for when the day comes that he decides to do something as crazy as what I'm doing.
Have you forgiven him for walking out on City and joining Liverpool?
No, I really got on with Millie. So yeah, in the end, you always want your best players to stay with you. But I think for his career, it was a great move as well, and I've always wanted him to do well.
Just on the subject of feeling old, and I remember you remember this as well, Richard, covering James Milner at Leeds when he was 16, and he had just come through, and it was all that. Could they survive? And you thought, who is this kid? And the career he's had. But the question is,
I think he's got the record as well of under 21 games with England. It's incredible.
Yeah, it's interesting because in England he was a peer of Wayne Rooney. They both came through at the same time, or 16, did great things. But look at where Wayne is now. But James is still doing it in the Premier League. It's not just he's playing. So, are you surprised by that, or knowing him as you do, you're probably not?
No, I'm not. But what I like about players like James, and there's not many about, but when you have a player like him, it's, and I think when he's young, he might not have as much of an impact on the group as when he's a senior player. So when a senior player like him comes in, that's won everything, and he's the first one in, he's the last one out. He trains hard, whether he plays or doesn't play, whether he's happy or not happy. Everybody around it knows, like, I'm gonna be embarrassed in front of everyone here if I don't uphold the same standard. And ultimately, teams getting better, players getting better. It's just all about that. There might have been loads of players who were better than James, but how many have had his career? Very, very few. And he's put himself into a bracket as well where he was amongst a team with exceptionally talented players. He could have been one of the most important players in that team, because he would even drive the standard up for these guys. And I've been lucky in my career to see have people like this in my dressing room, and you can't underestimate the impact they have on everybody else.
And then just on Brighton, are they, it's a clumsy question, but are they someone that maybe Burnley can look towards and maybe hope to one day aspire towards? Because the fact they've come through the leagues and now established the Premier League, they're upsetting some of the bigger boys. They've done things the right way off the pitch as well.
No, look, I think in all fairness, first things first, I think Burnley was one of those clubs, you know. But it came to a point where I think the advantage at the moment that these clubs have, like Brighton, is that they're able to produce tremendous sales, and those tremendous sales then fund the growth to compete with clubs of a different bracket. And that part of the model is extremely difficult to achieve just because you say so. It just takes time. It takes guys like Luka Koloesho and everything that can happen, but to mature and to establish themselves. And so if this is a pathway, I don't think we should compare ourselves to them. Absolutely not at this moment in time. We're at a completely different stage. But there is a template that's taken time for them to develop. That's obviously allowing them to compete above their means, and that's always that should be the goal for any team in this league, really.
Thank you. Hi, Vinny. Just you mentioned about the consistency of your performances recently. How much of being able to keep a consistent lineup and having that sort of core 9-10 players available throughout this run? How important has that been in linking that?
Yeah, it's a big part. It's a big part. But it's a discussion we had at the start of the season. You also, when you have to look at it in this way. When you have a lot, we had 6 players leaving, right? The core as well, like your Madsons, your all these guys that performed for us, and we kept Jordan Bayer obviously, but we had to replace them, and then we brought in a little bit more players because, you know, for the squad that we have, it's not like we can draw down 5 or 6 players like when I was at Anderlecht. I could just draw down 5 or 6 players from the academy and guess who's there? Doku. Guess who's there? You know, this was kind of the level that we. So for us, we had to build a little bit of a larger squad, just like now, to make sure that if something happens, we were able to during the season continue. But then the point I want to make about this is that you get to. I'm sorry. Go back to the question. I completely drifted here.
Just the consistency of having sort of the core.
Sorry, yeah.
Players.
I don't know. I just drifted as soon as I mentioned Luka again. I was like, oh, he's out for 4 months. But I drifted 4 months. I don't know, guys. It's just. I hope it's less. So to go back to the cohesion question, which is a very good question, but in the beginning you just have multiple options, and what you can't do is settle on a team that is not the closest team to being able to compete. And eventually you find, okay, it's a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and you put it together and you give them a run, and then players do improve. So that aspect was definitely something we wanted to achieve. But every single season I've dealt with squads with big turnovers. You have to allow for this to happen and have its natural course based on performances.
Within that, you mentioned Sander earlier in his performances alongside, and then Josh has obviously been alongside him in midfield. Just that seems to be a strong partnership that's formed. Just what do they complement about each other that's making that work at the moment?
It just landed this way, and this is what I'm saying. I think Sander was used, for example, in the past to play in a very man-oriented press, which means that his habits were very different from the things that we were doing, and that affected his performances early on in the season. So on paper, I always thought he would have an impact for us, but you know, you got taken out of the team a little bit because he wasn't there, and his performances picked up. Brownie was also performing well, and that's a little bit how it happened, I think. And the same happened for Zeki, you know. So the performances he's doing now compared to take the Aston Villa game we were getting sliced open on every pass, and you know the players would. That's kind of you see the talent, you see them perform, and then you say, okay, can they match it with the other side of the game? And in the end, you end up with a team of guys who become your core, and then everybody else now has to compete and try and. I'm not saying that 1 or 2 players won't change or 3 players, you know, but it'll have to be because of performance now.
That must be so encouraging, because you mentioned the blueprint, but for the collective tweaks that you're making, and then also see the individual improvements and tweaks that they're making in games. That must be really encouraging to see that you are on the right path of where you want to get to.
Yeah. The biggest thing for us now, and that's really the final thing, is I think you can still see when the game really opens up and stretches, you could see that these teams that we're facing, they've got some profiles that are quite unique, you know. That's what this league is about now. So, but okay, we've managed to be in games for a while now, and some of them even be better than the opposition. But now the key thing is that when we get into the boxes in the final third, is to make sure that this, you know, that the intent of scoring, the ability to score increases in our squad, because we have players with a goal scoring record outside of England. To do it in the Premier League or outside of the Premier League, so Championship or outside of England, to do it in the Premier League, it's a different ball game, but we believe they can make the step.
Cheers, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Right.
Thanks, Billy.
Thanks, Billy.
Take care.
This weekend.